6. Mythical creatures that were more real than you think. The ocean covers over 70% of our planet. The Amazon alone holds more undiscovered species than we've named in recorded history, and humans have only explored about 5% of Earth's deep sea. So when ancient civilizations, separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years, all describe the same creatures, the same details, the same behaviors, the same warnings, maybe the question isn't whether they were imagining things. Maybe the question is what they actually saw. Tonight, we're looking at 6 of the most compelling mythical creatures ever recorded, not just as legends, as possibilities. Creature number 1, the Kraken. Let's start with the most famous sea monster ever recorded. The Kraken. A beast so massive that Norse sailors believed it could be mistaken for an island. Ships would anchor beside it, light fires, cook meals, and then the island would begin to sink. Its tentacles, according to legend, could reach the top of a ship's mast and drag the entire vessel underwater in seconds. Norwegian fishermen didn't just fear the Kraken, they respected it. Because they also knew that wherever the Kraken surfaced, fishing was extraordinary. The creature disturbed the ocean floor so violently that fish rose to the surface in enormous numbers. Even the monster had a silver lining. The first detailed written account of the Kraken appears in a 1752 work by the Danish bishop Erik Pontoppidan, who compiled sailor testimonies from across Norway and Scandinavia. He described it as the largest sea monster in the world, roughly 1.5 miles in diameter when fully surfaced. Pontoppidan wasn't writing fiction. He was documenting what trained, experienced sailors consistently reported. And here's the thing about those sailors. Their lives depended on accurate observation. They couldn't afford to be wrong about the sea. Here's where it gets interesting. Giant squid are real. The Architeuthis ducks can reach over 40 feet in length. For centuries, the only evidence of their existence was found in the stomachs of sperm whales. Tentacle fragments, beaks, suction cup scars on whale skin the size of dinner plates. Scientists didn't believe anything that large could exist. Then, in 2004, a Japanese research team photographed a live giant squid in the wild for the first time. In 2012, the first video footage was captured. Before that moment, the giant squid was, to most of the world, a myth. And here's what that means. For hundreds of years, the scientific community dismissed what sailors had been reporting for centuries. The Kraken wasn't entirely wrong. It was just bigger than the animal that inspired it. Does the Kraken really exist as described? Probably not. But the ocean covers 80% of this planet, and we've explored less than 5% of its depths. If a 40-foot squid managed to hide from science until 2004, what else is still down there? Creature number 2, the Thunderbird. Across North America, from the Pacific Northwest to the Great Plains, from the Ojibwe to the Lakota to the Kwakwaka'wakw people, one creature appears in the mythology of nearly every indigenous civilization on the continent. The Thunderbird, a bird so enormous its wing beats created thunder. Lightning flashed from its eyes. It hunted whales, diving from the clouds, seizing them with talons the size of canoes, and carrying them into the sky to feed. What's remarkable about the Thunderbird isn't just the legend itself. It's the consistency. Cultures separated by thousands of miles, with no recorded contact, described the same creature in the same terms, the same size, the same behavior, the same relationship with storms. In oral traditions, the Thunderbird wasn't a symbol or a metaphor. It was a real animal, one that lived above the clouds and came down only when it chose to. Here's where science meets legend in a way that should give everyone pause. The Haast's eagle, Hiraidus moray, was a real bird. It lived in New Zealand and only went extinct around 1400 AD, well within human memory. It had a wingspan of up to 10 feet and talons comparable in size and strength to a modern tiger's claws. It hunted the moa, a bird that could weigh 500 pounds, by striking at speeds of up to 50 miles per hour and piercing bone with its grip. Maori oral tradition preserved detailed descriptions of this bird for centuries after its extinction, descriptions that were only confirmed accurate when fossils were finally studied by scientists. But there's more. Fossil evidence from North America shows that Argentavis magnificens, the largest bird to ever fly, had a wingspan of up to 23 feet and soared over the continent as recently as 6 million years ago. More recently, the teratorns, a family of enormous predatory birds, lived alongside early humans in the Americas. Some researchers believe early human encounters with these birds, creatures genuinely large enough to carry prey the size of a deer, may have seeded the thunderbird tradition across the continent. Does the thunderbird really exist? The exact creature in the legends, no. But something that looked very much like it once ruled the skies above North America, and the people who saw it never forgot. Creature number 3, the bunyip. In the rivers, swamps, and billabongs of Australia, the Aboriginal peoples have described the same creature for thousands of years, the bunyip. It lives in the water, it roars in the night, and it takes anyone foolish enough to come to the water's edge after dark. Descriptions vary. Some accounts describe a creature with a dog-like face and a horse's tail. Others describe a seal-like body with tusks. Others still describe something enormous and dark with a terrifying call that echoes across the water before you ever see it. But across thousands of years and dozens of different Aboriginal groups across an entire continent, the warning remained constant. Stay away from the water at night. Something is in there. European settlers arriving in Australia in the 18th and 19th centuries initially dismissed the bunyip as superstition. Then they started hearing it themselves. Explorers documented strange roaring sounds from rivers and swamps at night.
Creature
Hamilton Hume,
#3.
one of Australia's most respected early explorers, reported hearing and seeing something large and unfamiliar in the Murrumbidgee River in 1818. He couldn't identify it. In 1845, a skull was discovered in the banks of the Murrumbidgee that no scientist could classify. The Sydney Morning Herald published a report. The skull went on public display in Sydney, and Aboriginal witnesses who saw it immediately identified it as the bunyip. Here's what science offers. Australia was once home to Diprotodon optidum, the largest marsupial that ever lived. It was the size of a hippopotamus, semi-aquatic in behavior, and only went extinct approximately 46,000 years ago. That is recent enough for Aboriginal oral tradition, which has been proven to accurately preserve events going back tens of thousands of years, to have preserved memories of this animal. Some researchers believe the bunyip is a cultural memory of Diprotodon, passed down through oral tradition across millennia with remarkable consistency. Others point to the Australian fur seal, which does occasionally enter river systems and produces calls that are genuinely unsettling in the dark. Does the bunyip really exist today? Probably not. But something real was in those rivers, and the people who lived beside them for 60,000 years knew exactly what it was. Creature number 4. The Mongolian Death Worm. Deep in the Gobi Desert, one of the most remote and inhospitable places on Earth, Mongolian nomads have described the same creature for centuries, the Algoi Korkoi, in English, the Mongolian Death Worm. It is said to be bright red, between 2 and 5 feet long, and to resemble nothing so much as a section of intestine moving through the sand. It doesn't bite. It doesn't need to. According to every account, the death worm kills at a distance, either by spitting a corrosive yellow venom accurate enough to hit a target several feet away, or by generating an electrical discharge powerful enough to kill a camel. It lives beneath the sand and surfaces only in the hottest months of summer. And in the Gobi, it is not considered a myth. It is considered a fact of life. What's remarkable about the death worm reports is their consistency across time and geography. Mongolian nomads don't exaggerate about the desert. Their survival has always depended on
In the
accurate
Gobi,
knowledge of what
it is
lies
not
there.
considered a
When
myth.
Ivan Mackerel,
It is considered
a Czech
a
explorer,
fact of life.
began formally collecting testimonies in the 1990s, he found consistent accounts from across hundreds of miles of desert, from people with no contact with each other, all
It was roughly
describing
the
the
size
same
of two
animal in the
large
same
yaks.
terms.
It had a series of
The
bony
Mongolian government took
protrusions
the report
like these
seriously enough
down
that
its
several
spine.
formal expeditions have been organized, none of which found the creature, but all of which confirmed the consistency of the local testimony. Here's the scientific angle, and it's a good one. Several real animals fit pieces of the death worm description. The red sand boa,
Ivan Mackerel
Eryx
collected
miliaris,
testimonies,
is a real
consistent
snake found in
accounts from
Central
across
Asia.
hundreds of miles.
It's heavy-bodied, reddish-brown, blunt at both ends in a way that makes it look, frankly, like a section of intestine. It burrows in sand and is rarely seen. Certain species of electric rays can generate electrical discharges. And the spitting cobra, found in Africa and parts of Asia, can accurately spit venom into the eyes of a target up to 8 feet away. No single animal combines all of these traits. But in a desert as vast and as poorly studied as the Gobi, the possibility of an undiscovered species with unusual defensive mechanisms has never been fully ruled out. Does the death worm really exist? No confirmed specimen has ever been found, but the Gobi Desert is enormous, extremely difficult to search, and still yielding new fossils every decade. The last word hasn't been written yet. Creature number 5. The Nuckelavee. Of all the creatures in tonight's video, this is the one that will stay with you. The Nuckelavee comes from the Orkney Islands, off the northern coast of Scotland, a place of grey seas, howling winds, and an isolation that breeds very particular kinds of darkness. The Orcadian people described it with a precision that is almost clinical in its horror. The Nuckelavee is a horse with a rider fused to its back, not sitting on it, but grown into it, the two bodies merged into one continuous, hideous thing. It has no skin, none at all. The black blood moves visibly through yellow veins. The muscles are exposed and glistening. The rider's single enormous
is a
eye is
horse
red
with a
and
rider
burning.
fused
Its
to
breath
its
is a
back.
plague. Crops
Its
die
eye
where it
is
breathes.
red and burning.
Livestock fall sick. Disease follows wherever it walks. It comes from the sea, and it can only be stopped by crossing a freshwater stream, which it cannot cross. What makes the Nuckelavee extraordinary, apart from its appearance, is what it represents. The Orkney Islands were historically devastated by crop failures, livestock diseases, and coastal epidemics, all of which arrived, as far as the islanders could tell, from the sea. Merchant ships brought disease. Strange sea fogs preceded crop failures. Animals near the coast died for reasons no one could explain. The Nuckelavee was their framework for understanding catastrophe, not a superstition, a diagnosis. Something comes from the sea and it kills everything it touches. Here's what modern epidemiology offers. Many of the disease patterns the Orcadians described, sudden livestock death, crop destruction following coastal fog, are consistent with what we now know about airborne pathogens carried on sea winds, harmful algal blooms that produce toxic aerosols, and the introduction of new diseases by arriving ships. The specific detail that the Nuckelavee cannot cross fresh water is also interesting. Many waterborne and maritime pathogens are neutralized in fresh water, and the practice of washing in fresh water before coming inland from the coast is a genuine contamination control measure. The Orcadians had figured something out. They just didn't have the vocabulary to describe it the way we do now. Does the Nuckelavee really exist? No, but the thing it described, invisible, carried on sea winds, capable of destroying everything it touched, was very, very real. Creature number 6. The Yikiona. In the mountains of Japan, in the months when the snow comes and the passes close and whole villages can be cut off from the world for weeks at a time, there is a figure that has appeared in Japanese literature, art, and oral tradition for over 1,000 years. The Yikiona, the Snow Woman. She is described as impossibly beautiful, pale as the snow around her, tall with long black hair and eyes that hold no warmth at all. She appears to travelers caught in blizzards, often as a mercy, guiding them, sheltering them, breathing warmth onto frozen hands. And then, when they trust her,
she is described as impossibly beautiful.
She breathes cold
she kills
instead
them.
of warmth. She leads them off the path and into the storm, or sometimes she simply watches, beautiful and still, as the cold takes them on its own. The earliest written account of Yikiona appears in the Kwaidan, a collection of Japanese ghost stories compiled in 1904 by Lafcadio Hearn. But the oral traditions he drew from are centuries older. What's striking about the accounts is the consistency of the psychological description. The Yikiona doesn't just kill with cold. She creates a specific mental state in her victims. A sudden sense of warmth and calm in the middle of a lethal blizzard. A feeling of peace, a desire to lie down just for a moment, to rest. That mental state is real. It has a medical name. Paradoxical undressing and terminal burrowing are well-documented phenomena associated with severe hypothermia, the stage at which the body's temperature regulation completely fails and the dying person suddenly feels intensely hot, removes their clothing, and often crawls into a confined space. But before that final stage, there is a phase of profound, deceptive calm. Hypothermia victims in the later stages often feel comfortable, even peaceful. They stop feeling cold. They lose the urgency to survive. They simply drift. Mountain rescue workers in Japan and across the alpine world have found bodies that showed no signs of struggle, people who simply lay down in the snow and closed their eyes, apparently at peace. The Yikiona is the name the mountain gave to that feeling. The beautiful lie the cold tells you just before the end. Does she really exist? The woman in the snow? No. But the thing she represents, the way freezing to death can feel in its final moments, like falling asleep in warm arms. That is documented, confirmed, and as real as winter itself. Outrow 6 creatures. 6 legends that refuse to die. And if there's one thing tonight's stories have in common, it's this. The line between myth and reality has always been thinner than we're comfortable admitting. New species are discovered every year. The deep ocean remains largely unexplored. Ancient people weren't stupid. They were observant. They documented what they saw with the only tools they had: stories. So the next time someone tells you a creature is just a legend, ask yourself one question. What did they actually see? If you want to keep exploring, the next video is already waiting. And trust us, you haven't seen anything yet.